My name is Julian Vance, and on March 15th, I discovered that 3 years of absolute loyalty meant nothing when measured against one wealthy woman's wounded pride. I was standing in my office at 7 o'clock in the morning, organizing critical client files, when Isabella Pendleton burst through my door like a hurricane in expensive red-soled heels. Her perfectly sculpted face was twisted with raw rage, and her diamond-encrusted finger pointed directly at my chest. "You will be terminated today," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "Last night at the Children's Hospital Charity Gala, you deliberately disrespected me. When I approached your table, you remained seated like some kind of peasant." Her lips curled into a sneer that made my blood run cold. "My husband will hear about this immediately, and you will be clearing out your desk before lunch." I felt something crack inside my chest as I realized my entire career was about to crumble because I had not jumped up fast enough when the CEO's wife walked past our table. I was a 48-year-old professional who had dedicated 3 years to building our international division from a tiny portfolio of just 2 clients to 47 major accounts. I had worked weekends, missed countless family dinners, and poured my soul into this company, only for it to be threatened because Isabella Pendleton's ego could not handle what she perceived as a personal slight. Before that terrible morning, I had been working tirelessly to ensure the company's stability. 8 months earlier, I had been browsing exclusive consulting and tutoring websites, looking for extra income to help pay off some substantial outstanding medical debts. My degree in international business came with a specialty in Mandarin Chinese, thanks to 2 years I had spent studying in Beijing during college. I was completely fluent, but more importantly, I understood the cultural nuances that most Western business people missed entirely. That was when I found a posting on Elite Academic Services, an exclusive tutoring platform for wealthy clients. Someone needed intensive Mandarin lessons twice weekly at a private residence. The pay was extraordinary at $300 per session. No name was listed, only an address in the most expensive penthouse district of the city, and very specific requirements: complete discretion, professional appearance, and absolute confidentiality. I applied using a variation of my middle name, registering as Julian Ross, rather than the name that appeared on my official corporate documents. I styled my hair differently, wore thick-rimmed reading glasses that I did not normally need, and dressed far more conservatively than my usual high-end office attire. When you work with ultra-wealthy clients, they often prefer their staff to blend into the background. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, and every piece of furniture screamed wealth. That was where I first met my student, though at the time, I had no idea who she really was. She introduced herself simply as Bella, and her attitude told me everything I needed to know about how she viewed people she considered beneath her social standing. "You are here to teach me Mandarin," she announced without even a basic greeting. "I need to be conversational within 6 months. Not just basic phrases, but I need to conduct business meetings, negotiate contracts, and sound sophisticated. Can you do that? Or should I find someone else who is actually qualified?" I nodded politely, swallowing my pride. "Absolutely," I replied. "What is your current level?" She waved her hand dismissively. "I know some words. Let us just start." Within 10 minutes, I realized Bella knew almost nothing. She mispronounced basic greetings, mixed up tones completely, and became visibly frustrated when I corrected her pronunciation errors. But she was determined. I will give her that. Every session, she pushed herself harder, though she treated me like I was nothing more than a highly paid servant. "Bring me coffee next time," she would command at the end of our lessons. "And make sure you use the service entrance from now on. The doorman should not see tutors coming through the main lobby." I needed the money, so I smiled and nodded. $300 a session was worth swallowing my pride. As the months passed, I learned more about Bella's true motivation. She was working on what she called the deal of a lifetime, a joint venture with Chinese investors worth $50 million. She had convinced everyone in her social circle that she was fluent in Mandarin, that she had studied it extensively, and that she was the perfect person to handle international negotiations. "My husband thinks I am naturally gifted with languages," she bragged during one session. Everyone at the country club is so impressed when I drop Mandarin phrases into conversation. They have no idea how business really works. The irony was painful. Bella could barely string together a coherent sentence in Mandarin. Even after months of intensive lessons, every single word had to be written phonetically for her to pronounce it correctly. Her grammar was elementary at best, but she was living in a fantasy where she was this sophisticated international businesswoman. Meanwhile, at my day job at Apex International, I was actually doing the work she pretended to do. I had built our company's Asian market division from nothing. I spoke with Chinese clients daily, handled complex negotiations, and had personally closed deals worth millions. But Bella, who I still did not know was Isabella Pendleton, was playing pretend with her husband's money. The breakthrough in our lessons came 6 weeks before that terrible morning in my office. Bella was practicing her presentation for the Chinese investors, and it was an absolute disaster. She could not remember basic business terms, kept confusing yes and no, and was essentially speaking gibberish with a confident tone. "This is not working," I told her gently during a tense moment. "You need more practice with fundamental concepts before attempting complex negotiations." Her face turned bright red with embarrassment. "Are you saying I am stupid?" she demanded. "Not at all," I replied calmly. "Mandarin is incredibly difficult. Most people need years of study to reach business-level fluency." "I do not have years," she exploded. "This presentation is everything to me. It is my chance to prove I belong in the business world, not just as some trophy wife." "You have to make this work, Julian." That was the first time I saw a real vulnerability in her behavior. Beneath all the arrogance and entitlement was someone desperate to be taken seriously. I actually felt a brief moment of sympathy for her situation. "We will work extra sessions," I promised. "I will create phonetic scripts for your entire presentation. You can memorize it word for word." Her relief was obvious, though she immediately returned to her demanding self. "You cannot tell anyone about this," she warned. "If people knew I was getting help, it would ruin everything." "Of course not," I replied. "Client confidentiality is sacred to me." Over the next month and a half, I basically rewrote her entire presentation in phonetic Mandarin. We practiced for hours until she could recite it perfectly, though she still did not understand the actual meaning of the words she was saying. I created backup materials, alternative phrases for different scenarios, and even coached her on proper bowing techniques and cultural customs. She started treating me slightly better during this period, not as an equal, but at least like a valued employee rather than disposable help. She would offer me drinks, ask about my background, and occasionally say please and thank you. "You are quite good at this," she admitted one evening. "Where did you learn to speak so fluently?" I told her about my studies in Beijing, my business degree, and my work in international markets. I was careful not to mention company names or specific details that might connect me to Apex International. "Impressive," she said, though her tone suggested she still saw me as hired help who just happened to be educated. "You should consider working for a real company instead of just tutoring." If she only knew the truth, 2 weeks before the investor presentation, Bella was finally hitting her stride. She could deliver the entire pitch smoothly, answer basic questions, and even handle small talk about weather and travel. She was nowhere near fluent, but she could fake it well enough for a formal business meeting. "I am going to be magnificent," she declared after our final practice session. "Those investors will not know what hit them. This deal will change everything." I smiled and packed up my materials. "You have worked incredibly hard. I am sure it will go well." That was when she made the comment that would haunt me later. "You know, I am attending a charity gala this weekend," she said. "It is for the Children's Hospital, and all the important business people in the city will be there. I will finally be able to show off my language skills to everyone." My heart sank. Apex International was a major sponsor of that same gala. I would be there representing our international division, sitting at our corporate table. There was a good chance I would see Bella, though she still had no idea who I really was. I considered canceling or at least warning her, but I could not figure out how to do it without revealing my identity. Besides, the odds of us interacting seemed small. The gala was beautiful. Our company had purchased an entire table near the front, and I was seated with our senior management team and their spouses. I had chosen a sharp black suit, styled my hair differently, and worn contact lenses instead of my usual thick glasses. I looked completely different from the conservative tutor Bella knew. Halfway through dinner, I spotted her across the room. She was radiant in a stunning silver gown, holding court at what was obviously the most prestigious table in the venue. She was animated, gesturing expressively as she spoke to the people around her table. Then I saw him, the man sitting beside her, nodding and smiling as she talked. My blood turned to ice as recognition hit me like a freight train. Bella was Isabella Pendleton, the wife of my CEO. The woman I had been tutoring for 8 months was married to my boss, Oliver Pendleton. I spent the rest of the evening in a daze, barely touching my food, praying she would not notice me. When dessert was served, I excused myself to use the restroom, hoping to avoid any chance encounters. But fate had other plans. As I was returning to my table, Isabella was walking directly toward me. She was heading to greet someone at a nearby table, and our paths would intersect in seconds. I quickly sat down and focused on my plate, hoping she would pass by without paying attention to me. That was when everything went wrong. Julian? A colleague called out my name, Julian Vance. I looked up automatically, responding to my name just as Isabella walked past. Our eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. I saw confusion flicker across her face, as if she almost recognized me but could not quite place where she had seen me. Then the moment passed and she continued walking. I thought I was safe. I thought those 2 seconds of near recognition would not matter. I was so incredibly wrong. The next morning, she stormed into my office with murder in her eyes, and I finally understood what had happened. Isabella had spent the entire night trying to figure out where she had met me before. When she could not place my face, she convinced herself that I had deliberately snubbed her by not standing when she passed my table. In her mind, some random employee had disrespected the CEO's wife at a charity gala, and that simply could not be tolerated. "Pack your things," my boss, Oliver Pendleton, said after Isabella finished her tirade and stormed out. His face was grim, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "I am sorry, Julian, I really am. But I cannot have this kind of drama at home." I stared at him in disbelief. "You are firing me because I did not stand up fast enough when your wife walked past our table?" "She says you deliberately ignored her." Oliver sighed. "That you made her look foolish. That is insane. I was eating dinner and did not even realize she was there." "It does not matter," Oliver said heavily. "She has made up her mind, and arguing with her will only make things worse. I will give you excellent references and a generous severance package." I felt my entire world collapsing. 3 years of perfect performance reviews, countless successful deals, and relationships with clients who trusted me completely meant nothing because Isabella's pride had been wounded. That was when inspiration struck. "Before I go," I said calmly, "there is something you should know about your wife's big presentation with the Chinese investors." I walked to my computer and opened my personal email account. With a few quick clicks, I sent him a message with video attachments from every single tutoring session I had recorded for my own pedagogical reference. "Check your email," I said quietly. His face went pale as he opened the first video. There was Isabella stumbling through basic Mandarin phrases, asking me to repeat everything phonetically, and admitting she could not understand what she was saying. "She has been lying to you," I continued. "For 8 months, I have been her private tutor. She cannot speak Mandarin beyond memorized scripts. Everything she has told you about her language abilities is completely false." I reached into my bag, pulled out my thick-rimmed reading glasses, and put them on, transforming back into the person Isabella knew as her tutor. "I am Julian Ross," I said, "and effective immediately. Your wife's Mandarin lessons are canceled." The silence in that office was deafening. Oliver sat frozen, staring at the computer screen where his wife was clearly struggling with pronunciation that any first-year language student would master easily. The video showed her asking me over and over to write everything in English letters because she could not read Chinese characters. "This presentation is in 3 days," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I know," I replied. "I helped her prepare every word of it. She has memorized it like a script, but she does not understand what she is saying. If anyone asks her an unscripted question in Mandarin, or if she needs to deviate from her prepared remarks even slightly, the whole thing will collapse." He looked up at me with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "Why did you not tell me who you were during the lessons?" "Client confidentiality," I replied. "She hired me through an elite tutoring service under strict privacy agreements. I had no idea she was your wife until last night at the gala. Even then, I planned to keep her secret because that is what professionals do. I gathered the last of my personal items from my desk, but since she has decided to destroy my career over an imaginary slight, I figure those confidentiality agreements are void." "Wait," Oliver stood up quickly. "Do not leave yet. We need to discuss this." "There is nothing to discuss," I said. "Your wife made her choice. I am just making sure you understand what that choice actually costs." I walked toward the door, then paused. Those Chinese investors are not just bringing money to this deal. They are bringing their top executives, their translators, and their cultural liaison. People who will immediately recognize whether your wife can actually communicate or if she is just reciting memorized phrases. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and I walked out of that building. But I was wrong if I thought that was the end. The next 3 days passed in a blur of job applications. I also received several angry phone calls and voicemail messages from Isabella. Apparently, Oliver had confronted her about the tutoring sessions, and she was furious that I had exposed her deception. "You signed confidentiality agreements," she screamed during one particularly unpleasant voicemail. "I will sue you for breach of contract, and I will make sure you never work in this city again." I called her back once, mainly out of professional curiosity. "Actually, Isabella, you should read those agreements more carefully. They protect client privacy from outside commercial exploitation, but they do not prevent a service provider from defending their livelihood when a client attempts to destroy their career through malicious lies and false accusations. Furthermore," I continued, "any lawsuit you attempt to file will be completely void ab initio under the legal doctrine of fraud in the inducement, as you entered into our tutoring arrangement, using false representations regarding your intentions. Your threats also border on tortious interference, and if you proceed, my legal counsel will file a countersuit detailing your misrepresentation of corporate assets and qualifications. You have misrepresented your language capabilities to the board of directors for a major transaction, which constitutes a severe breach of fiduciary duty. If you expose this in court, you will be the one facing severe legal and financial consequences." The line went silent, and she hung up. I tried to put the entire situation behind me, focusing on finding a new role. I had bigger problems to worry about, like explaining my sudden departure to prospective employers. But I could not stop thinking about the Chinese investors. Some of them were executives I had worked with professionally over the past 3 years. Mr. Zhang Wei, from Beijing Manufacturing, always started meetings with respectful inquiries about family, and Ms. Zhao Hong from Shanghai Logistics deeply appreciated cultural protocols and traditional greetings. They were coming to this presentation expecting a partner who understood their language and customs. Instead, they were about to encounter Isabella Pendleton and her completely fabricated expertise. On the morning of the presentation, I woke up with a heavy knot in my stomach. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Oliver Pendleton, and he sounded absolutely desperate. "Julian, I need your help," he pleaded. "I do not work there anymore, Oliver," I replied. "The investors arrived early," he said, his voice trembling. "They wanted to have a casual pre-meeting lunch, and Isabella is panicking. She cannot handle any casual conversation in Mandarin. She has locked herself in the executive restroom and refuses to come out. The deal is falling apart." I almost felt sorry for her, but I kept my composure. "That is unfortunate, but it is no longer my concern." "I will reinstate you immediately," Oliver offered. "A full promotion, a substantial raise, whatever you want. Just please help us get through this presentation." I considered it for exactly 3 seconds. "No," I replied. "Julian, please," Oliver begged. "This deal is worth $50 million to Apex International. If it falls apart, the board will force me to downsize the international division. We will have to lay off at least 20 employees." That statement hit me harder than I expected. The international division was not just my creation. It was staffed by dedicated, hard-working professionals who did not deserve to lose their livelihoods because of Isabella's arrogance. I felt a sense of duty toward the team members who had supported me. worked late nights, and helped me build the division from the ground up. I could not let them suffer because of a spoiled woman's vanity and a weak CEO's poor decisions. I will make you a single proposal, I said. I will attend the presentation as an independent consultant for a premium fee. I will handle the translations and the cultural facilitation, but I am doing this strictly to protect the employees, not to save your wife's reputation. And after today, I want a written guarantee that Isabella will never be permitted to contact me or interfere with my division again. Thank you, Oliver breathed in relief. I will have the agreement drafted immediately. I arrived at the corporate offices 45 minutes before the scheduled meeting. The conference room had been prepared with multimedia displays and catering showing proper respect for Chinese business etiquette. Isabella was standing near the window, practicing her rehearsed opening remarks under her breath. She looked elegant, but the terror in her eyes was unmistakable when she saw me enter. "What is he doing here?" she hissed at Oliver, her voice trembling. "He is here to save the deal," Oliver whispered back, avoiding her gaze. Isabella glared at me with absolute hatred. "Fine," she snapped, "but you stay in the background. This is my presentation, my deal, and my moment to shine." I remained silent, nodding politely, knowing that the reality of the situation would speak for itself soon enough. The investors arrived precisely on time. Mr. Zhongwei greeted me warmly in Mandarin, and I responded with the correct cultural honorifics and a respectful bow. Ms. Zhao Hong asked about my recent analysis of Shanghai shipping regulations, and we engaged in a brief, professional conversation about trade routes and compliance challenges. I could see Isabella watching us with intense anxiety, clutching her presentation remote. The investors were clearly comfortable speaking with me, but when Isabella tried to insert herself into the conversation with a few stiff, rehearsed phrases, the atmosphere grew noticeably strained. "Perhaps we should begin the formal presentation," Mr. Zhongwei suggested in English, politely steering the group away from the awkward exchange. Isabella took her position at the front of the room and began her slides. She delivered the memorized presentation reasonably well, as we had practiced those specific sentences for hours. The investors listened politely, taking notes. But then Ms. Zhao Hong raised her hand. "Could you clarify the logistics timeline for the Shanghai Distribution Center, specifically regarding the new customs clearance protocols?" she asked in Mandarin. Isabella's face went completely blank. The question was entirely outside her rehearsed script. "I am sorry," she stammered in English, looking desperately at me. "Could you repeat that?" Ms. Zhao Hong repeated the question in Mandarin, speaking slower. Isabella turned to me, her eyes pleading for help. I remained silent, letting her face the consequences of her choices. Isabella tried to construct an answer, stammering out a series of broken, grammatically incorrect Mandarin words that made absolutely no sense. Mr. Zhongwei frowned, exchanging a concerned look with his colleagues. They immediately realized that she did not comprehend the language she claimed to speak. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in English," Mr. Zhongwei said diplomatically. Though the damage was already done, the investors had come to Apex International expecting a qualified, culturally competent partner. Instead, they discovered they were being presented to by someone who had fabricated her expertise. Ms. Zhao Hong then asked a complex question in English regarding regulatory compliance. Isabella had no idea how to respond. "Perhaps my consultant can address that," she said weakly. I stepped forward and answered the question in detail, outlining the regulatory framework, recent customs updates, and risk mitigation strategies. I explained the transition from old import regulations to the new pilot free trade zone protocols, demonstrating how Apex International could minimize tariffs through strategic warehousing in the Pudong district. I also addressed Ms. Zhao Hong's concerns about local transport unions and container shipping delays with detailed local data. The investors listened intently, nodding in approval as I detailed the complex legal requirements and logistics protocols. For the remaining 20 minutes of the meeting, they directed all their questions to me. Isabella stood to the side, completely excluded from her own presentation. Finally, Mr. Zhongwei addressed the room. "We were told Mrs. Pendleton would manage this venture, but it is clear Mr. Vance possesses the necessary expertise. We cannot partner with someone who has misrepresented their qualifications so thoroughly. The meeting adjourned and the investors prepared to leave. Ms. Zhao Hong approached me privately before exiting. "We are very impressed by your professionalism, Julian," she said in Mandarin. "If you were leading this partnership, we would proceed. But we will not do business under false pretenses." After they departed, the conference room fell silent. $50 million, Oliver whispered, his head in his hands. "Gone. It was never truly there," I replied. "You cannot build international partnerships on pretense." Isabella glared at me. "This is all your fault," she screamed, trying to claim that I had deliberately sabotaged her presentation. "No, Isabella," I said. "This is the consequence of your arrogance. You chose to lie about your qualifications. You chose to terminate my employment over a petty, imaginary slight, and you chose to prioritize your ego over the livelihoods of 50 employees. You cannot blame your tutor for your own lack of integrity." I walked out of the building, confident that I had done everything I could to protect my team. 2 weeks later, Oliver Pendleton called me with an unexpected proposal. The board of directors had launched an internal investigation into the failed presentation and the circumstances of my wrongful termination. Several board members who knew my track record were furious at the executive mismanagement. The board of directors, led by the chairperson Beatrice Finch, held an emergency meeting to address the reputational damage and the loss of the partnership. Beatrice Finch contacted me directly, expressing the board's deep disappointment in Oliver's oversight and apologizing on behalf of the company for the way I had been treated. "The board has decided to restructure our leadership," Oliver said quietly. "They want to offer you the position of Vice President of International Business Development, with a substantial salary increase, complete operational autonomy, and your own budget." I accepted the offer on 3 strict conditions. First, a written guarantee that family members of executives would have zero involvement in personnel decisions. Second, a formal apology from the company placed in my file. And third, that Isabella Pendleton be permanently banned from entering corporate premises or contacting my staff. The board agreed to every term. 6 months later, I successfully rebuilt the relationship with the Chinese investors, closing a restructured contract worth $68 million. The new agreement was far more lucrative than the original proposals, establishing a long-term alliance that solidified our division's prominence. Isabella, meanwhile, became an outcast in her social circle as rumors of her fabricated language skills and failed presentation spread. The final piece of justice came 8 months later, when the board of directors decided to replace Oliver Pendleton due to his poor oversight and lack of leadership. They promoted me to Senior Vice President of Global Operations, placing me 2 floors above Oliver's former office. Isabella never spoke to me again, and I eventually heard she had hired a new tutor for a different language. I only hope her next teacher is prepared for her demands. Ultimately, Isabella tried to destroy my career to satisfy her wounded pride, but her vindictiveness only exposed her own incompetence and paved the way for my advancement. The business world has a logical way of correcting pretense, and when reality catches up, it is always best to be on the side of competence and integrity. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed someone's elaborate lies unravel in a spectacular fashion? Have you ever stood your ground and watched karma turn a setback into your greatest triumph? Share your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of workplace justice and professional redemption. Because when you focus on substance over appearance, the truth always wins in the end. All you have to do is let the natural consequences of their actions unfold and watch as the pieces fall exactly where they belong.